Laid down in 1927 and launched in 1929, HMS Dorsetshire was one of the counter-class heavy cruisers of the Royal Navy. She represented Britain's response to the restrictions of the Washington Naval Treaty, which limited the tonnage and armament of cruisers worldwide. Designed primarily for long-range service across the vast reaches of the British Empire, Dorsetshire was a product of necessity and ingenuity. The ship displaced approximately 10,600 tons standard and measured nearly 630 feet in length. Her primary armament consisted of 8 8-inch guns mounted in 4 twin turrets, 2 forward and 2 aft. These weapons gave her formidable firepower for her size, capable of engaging enemy cruisers and protecting convoys across the world's oceans. In addition, she carried 4-inch secondary guns for defense against smaller surface threats and aircraft, alongside torpedo tubes, making her versatile in both offensive and defensive roles. Her design emphasized endurance rather than armor. She had relatively thin plating compared to battleships or battlecruisers, a compromise that allowed her to maintain high speed over long distances, but at a cost. She would not withstand heavy punishment in a direct clash with a larger or well-armed adversary. Yet, in the interwar period, endurance, speed, and range were more valuable than armor for a ship intended to patrol the far-flung corners of the Empire. During the 1930s, Dorsetshire served primarily in the East Indies and African stations, regions where the Royal Navy maintained a visible presence to deter rival powers and protect British commerce. Her routine was one of patrols, training exercises, and ceremonial duties, yet even in these quiet years, her crew learned the rhythms of life at sea, the meticulous maintenance of engines, the discipline required to fire her main guns accurately, and the camaraderie forged in a ship where every officer and sailor depended on each other for survival. She was part of a class of ships designed for endurance, capable of steaming thousands of miles without refueling. This was essential for protecting trade and patrolling vast areas where naval bases were scarce. Dorsetshire and her sisters were the mobile guardians of the Empire, ready to respond to threats thousands of miles from home. Her speed and versatility made her a formidable presence. While her armor could not withstand direct hits from battleships, her guns and maneuverability allowed her to control encounters with smaller enemy cruisers or commerce raiders. For much of the 1930s, this quiet service established her reputation as a dependable, if unglamorous, warship. With the outbreak of the Second World War in September 1939, Dorsetshire's role shifted dramatically. From peacetime patrols, she became a part of the Royal Navy's global wartime effort, assigned to protect convoys, hunt enemy raiders, and support larger fleet operations. Her long range and speed were now critical, allowing her to cover vast oceanic theaters where the stakes were suddenly life and death. She participated in operations throughout the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean, demonstrating the flexibility of the counter-class cruisers. Unlike many larger, slower battleships tied to fleets, ships like Dorsetshire were nimble, capable of responding to threats quickly, whether from German surface raiders or Japanese forces in the east. It was during this period that she would find herself associated, however briefly, with one of the most famous naval episodes of the war, the hunt for the German battleship Bismarck. In May 1941, the Royal Navy faced a dire situation. The mighty Bismarck had sunk HMS Hood, Britain's pride and a symbol of naval power. The fleet scrambled to hunt the German battleship across the North Atlantic. HMS Dorsetshire, though a cruiser and not a battleship, was among the forces dispatched to assist in the pursuit. She arrived on the scene in time to participate in the final moments of the hunt. Dorsetshire launched torpedoes at the crippled German battleship, contributing to the relentless assault that ultimately sank Bismarck. After the battle, Dorsetshire performed a humanitarian act amid the chaos of war. She rescued survivors from the water, including German sailors who had endured the sinking of their battleship. This episode, a brief intersection with history's most infamous battleship, would be a highlight in her otherwise understated career. By 1942, HMS Dorsetshire was redeployed to the Eastern Fleet, based in the Indian Ocean. Japan had entered the war, and the Imperial Japanese Navy was rapidly asserting dominance across Southeast Asia and the Pacific. The Eastern Fleet was tasked with protecting shipping lanes, harbors, and British colonies from Japanese aggression, but it was severely outnumbered and outgunned. The operational environment was dangerous. Japanese carriers could project air power over hundreds of miles, and even a well-armed cruiser like Dorsetshire faced the deadly threat of dive bombers and torpedo attacks. Her role was now not just patrolling for raiders or commerce protection, she was on the front line of a new type of naval warfare, where aircraft could strike from the sky with devastating effect. On April 5, 1942, the Japanese launched a massive air assault on the British Eastern Fleet in what is now remembered as the Indian Ocean Raid. The carriers Shokaku and Zuikaku, along with other Japanese vessels, struck the fleet with overwhelming force. HMS Dorsetshire, along with her sister ship HMS Cornwall, were caught alone at sea. The attack was swift and merciless. Japanese dive bombers descended from the sky, releasing bombs that struck with devastating precision. Within minutes, Dorsetshire was engulfed in flames, her engines crippled, and her guns silenced. The crew fought valiantly, attempting to control the damage, launch lifeboats, and save as many comrades as possible. But the fire spread rapidly, fueled by fuel lines and ammunition. Despite the chaos, many sailors managed to abandon ship. Over 500 crew survived, clinging to rafts and debris, enduring nearly 30 hours in the water before being rescued. Tragically, 234 men were lost, many swallowed by the sea or trapped within the burning vessel. The loss of Dorsetshire was a stark reminder that the era of the surface cruiser was increasingly vulnerable to air power. HMS Dorsetshire is often overlooked in histories of the Second World War. She was neither the flagship of a major fleet action nor the center of a famous battle like Warspite or Hood. Yet her story encapsulates the evolution of naval warfare, the risks faced by Royal Navy crews worldwide, and the courage of men who served on ships far from home. Today, HMS Dorsetshire rests on the ocean floor, a memorial to the sailors who served and died aboard her. Her story is not one of fame or glory, but of steadfast duty, adaptability, and courage. She bridged the eras of traditional surface combat and the age of air power, a testament to the men who sailed her and the shipbuilders who constructed her. For historians, naval enthusiasts, and viewers of ships of war, Dorsetshire represents the forgotten yet vital ships that carried the Royal Navy through the most dangerous waters of the Second World War. She reminds us that history is often written not just by the legendary ships, but by those whose names are less known, the cruisers, destroyers, and sloops whose service kept the fleet operational and the sea secure. In her story, there is drama, strategy, tragedy, and courage. She fought silently across the oceans, faced one of the world's most powerful enemies, and ultimately gave her crew a chance to live while the ship herself was lost. From patrolling distant colonial waters to participating briefly in the hunt for the greatest German battleship of the war, and finally to the deadly skies of the Indian Ocean, Dorsetshires' journey is a microcosm of the Royal Navy's global struggle during the Second World War. Her legacy is clear. Ships like Dorsetshire may not dominate textbooks or popular culture, but they were indispensable to the war effort, and their stories deserve to be told. They remind us that heroism is not always loud or celebrated. Sometimes it is quiet, measured, and written in the courage of those who served far from home, in ships that bore the weight of an empire, and in battles that history should never forget. From the gun decks to the bridge, every story we tell honors those who served. If this tale made you feel the salt and steel of history, give it a like, and if you're not yet part of our channel's convoy, subscribe and join the ranks. More powerful stories await.